Yo, what is up guys, it's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see what if Naruto becomes the mythical knight, part 7. Hope you will enjoy the video. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. So let's get into the video.
Ash drifted away with the screams as Naruto stood in among the flames as he had finally gotten his target. He felt a little bad for the man, but in the end, it was either him or him. Naruto had just chosen for it to be him, or more correctly put, the vampire went up in flames, horror on his face as it dissolved away, burning down to nothing but dust to the wind. Naruto started as he felt a raindrop hit his nose and looked up as thunder exploded with streaks of lightning. The dark smoke-full sky full of rain clouds out of nowhere, and because of the flames the fog seemed to have fallen away from the area. The rain poured down, and Naruto couldn't tell whether it was natural or not, as it was heavy enough to soak him to the bone in seconds, and start putting out the fires, when he felt Hinata take his hand, after she had climbed out of the shop she had fallen into with her cousin. The rain mixed with her tears, and she held a white bone-like side. Naruto looked at Hinata with a sad expression. "Hinata-chan," he called over the rushing sound of the storm. "Let's get out of here, and find some place to wait out the storm." He trailed off as the storm had ceased in seconds to only be replaced with snow as a huge blizzard hit, showing that this really wasn't a normal storm. She nodded through the cold as he led her over the roofs before they jumped down, as either the zombies were dead or having more trouble than anyone could in the blizzard, before Naruto kicked open the door to his store, as they both rushed in, shivering as they closed the door behind them. "Damn, I am seriously not going to be nice to the mage when I get hold of her," Naruto said in annoyance. "Are you okay, Hinata-chan?" "Yeah, just a little cold," she said, then startled when Naruto pulled her into his arms, smiling down at her. He kissed her forehead while the storm raged on outside. "I feel much warmer now," she said, smiling as she snuggled into his arms. "Yeah," he said slowly as he looked around the shop. It contained all sorts of climbing equipment and cold weather gear. And why wouldn't there be shops like this when there were mountains and cliffs prime for adventurers and thrill seekers, and stupid people with too much free time to climb hidden by the fog up past the monastery? "It looks like we can get some warmer gear here," Naruto said, smirking as she pulled back with wide eyes as she realized what kind of store they were in. "Luck bestows us with the right kind of hidey hole, my lovely Hinata-chan." Hinata laughed and kissed Naruto's cheek as she pulled back to look around, trying to hide her limp from him, or how tired she was without much luck. He just rolled his eyes as he looked around with her, trying to not let her see how hurt he was, and not managing it either, but neither of them mentioned it. They both ended up wearing long white coats with fluffy hoods and cuffs, and changing their boots for thermal white boots with fluffy cuffs, and warm trousers and fleeces, and they both peeked. They wrapped themselves in white scarves around their ears, noses and mouths, and thick white gloves, followed by some transition ski glasses goggles for added protection. "Nice and warm and got to see your arse again," Naruto said with a grin while she squirmed. "I look too," Hinata said bravely but smugly as she pulled her scarf down to reveal her blushing cheeks and smile with one hand, and pulled at his with the other, and on tiptoes, she kissed his lips before letting their scarves pop back. "So, my naughty Hinata-chan," Naruto said with a pat to her butt while he walked to the door, laughing. "Ready to head out into the world?" he asked as they pulled up their hoods. She nodded her head. "Yeah, but why would the witch do this?" Naruto growled in annoyance. "Probably because she wants to send out a wintertime monster after us, and can't do that without the snow, and it puts out my fires as she likely doesn't want the town burned down yet. Though, I'll admit seeing snow for the first time is quite cool, but its cool factor is taken away when we're being attacked by a bitch that now controls the weather." They stepped out of the shop into a huge blizzard, barely able to see their hands in front of their eyes. They held hands as they walked, their new boots having the right kind of grip for the newly slippery grounds. It was amazing that they walked past some zombies as they quivered on the floor unable to attack them, and whether they're making any noise, neither Hinata nor Naruto could tell over the roaring of the cold wind. However, it was nice not to have to flee the walking dead, as what remained of them were unable to move because of the cold. Their coats flapped about as they trekked through the ever-thickening snow. Though, on the plus side, neither had ever had the chance to try snow walking before then, and there was nothing like an evil threat to set you to it, and make you an expert relatively fast. It was hard going and felt like they might as well be on a frost-capped mountain, rather than in the middle of what was once a beautiful town at a low summit. The only thing that seemed to be keeping them on track was the light reflecting off the temple tower in the distance, or they wouldn't have a clue how to get there. Their senses were much too dulled by the bad weather. Hinata and Naruto held on to each other tightly, not wanting to risk getting separated as they trudged on. Though, it was much easier going once they both started becoming confident in snow walking, as the snow was now around 20 inches high, and piling up, so it wasn't just snow walking, it was making sure to tread up each tiny layer as it formed. Which was tiring since their last fight had taken quite a lot out of them. The walk was getting a bit tedious when the ground shook beneath their feet, the snow parting and slipping. Naruto and Hinata were fast as they both jumped away, skipping and sliding back on the snow, as the blizzard just stopped in moments, causing them to start, almost as much as the giant white furry worm thing with monster snout full of razor-like teeth. The speedy little black eyes glaring down at them. At least the storm stopped, Hinata muttered, her voice muffled by her scarf. It was still very cold, so they wouldn't be unwrapping anytime soon. Even with the sun now blaring down on them, the clouds cleared, and the sky became a beautiful blue. However, looking around, the fog still obscured around the outer reaches of the town. I think whoever's doing this is fucking with us, Naruto replied as they both jumped apart and to the sides and back as the worm went to chomp on them, only getting snow. They looked around to see they were in a large clear area covered in snow. They were more startled as some huge white-furred muscle-bound gorilla men soon surrounded them holding axes and swords, but for one creature holding a horn of some kind. They both prepared to fight them too while dodging the worm monster. This is not a fun mission, Hinata said as she dodged a snow monkey, her new scythe taking its head before she moved again, while its blood colored the snow. Hinata ran, diving out of the worm's tail strike, with Naruto appearing with her moments later landing on the back of a persuading gorilla thing, a kunai through his skull before Naruto flipped over, landing on his footed feet, and continuing to run with Hinata. They dodged and weaved around the worm monster while they swiftly moved around gorilla monsters. Shit, these monkeys are fast. Naruto groaned as they left the park, straight back into town, while moving, fighting two of the gorillas, hand to hand. And they're not bad fighters, either. I think they're yetis, not monkeys, Hinata replied as her scythe stabbed forward into another one, while dodging three more as they came at her. Meanwhile, the giant worm was tearing up the town, smashing through buildings while chasing them, but at least it didn't seem to care about the yeti, as many of them were getting careless and eaten. Hinata and Naruto moved and split up, one going right, and the other left. The worm monster chased after Naruto, which made the blonde thankful and concerned as he roundhoused the yeti into the ground with a boom without losing momentum. He jumped forward, avoiding a tail swipe before landing down, skidding on hands and feet in a bent-back motion, before flipping himself up to his feet, and blasting off faster than before in a new direction. Moving as fast as he could, Naruto dodged, and weaved, and leapt out of the attacker's range, sometimes by a bare margin. The monster worm's roars following Naruto with it as the yeti keeps leaping in to reach him. Naruto kicked them away and tried to stab them, kunai flying and some exploding as they hit with exploding tags attached. Naruto skidded left and right, dodging back and forward. Running low on kunai, he started holding one in each hand and weaving around and under yeti, slitting their throats where he could, and was near a point where he was going to unseal his alternate weapon, but he held back. He knew what this witch was trying to do. Naruto only played dumb when he needed to. The witch was trying to completely exhaust him and Hinata, either for the worm's lunch or for capture. It seemed obvious their last opponents were ordered to capture them. Naruto could only worry about the rest of the team, as he was certain if they were able, they would have come to their aid when he started setting the town on fire. They might not have beaten their captors. Naruto was panting deeply with exertion as he had had enough. He spun around to face the giant monster worm, his glasses glowing with a red hue as he breathed in. He pulled down his scarf, and then he breathed out in seconds. A huge stream of red flames blazed out of his mouth. The yeti caught in the flames could only let out small screams before they were burned husks. The flames engulfed the monster worm and melted the snow around it. It roared its agony, and Naruto just channeled more demonic chakra, creating hotter flames. He watched through the heat as areas of the worm popped like a spot, bubbling up and splashing out globs of blue blood, before he quit his fire attack and fell to his knees, taking in deep breaths. The monster worm was down but still alive, green goo splitting out of its flesh as it flailed around in pain on the ground. However, Naruto moved, jumping back before shooting forward, slicing through Yeti's chest with his final kunai, only leaving him with a few shuriken as he skipped up. He never carried many shuriken. Naruto had some blood drooling from his lips as he shot forward and smashed his right hand and arm through the monster worm's head, ending it before skipping back a few times as more Yeti were surrounding him. Meanwhile, Hinata had sighed in relief from where she dodged Yeti as she saw the flames. So, she knew Naruto was going to be okay, well she hoped he was. Hinata at least had her new side while Naruto might be running low on weapons, or having run out of weapons, but still, Hinata knew Naruto always had a backup supply of power to charge his chakra attacks, since he told her his secret. Hinata sliced through Yeti after Yeti for a few moments as they charged at her before they fell back, watching her with caution. She held her scythe in both hands in a low stance, her muscles all taut and ready to strike, her now active. The veins around her eyes were bulging, and her eyes held a deep dark silver sparkle. Hinata hadn't noticed before when she fought against her cousin, but now, her eyes didn't have any kind of blind spot, and the world around her had slowed down, taking everything in. She had heard rumors of this, but never had she believed that they had a second form, let alone that she could activate it. She took a few steps back to give her enemy a sense that she might be scared or too weakened to fight, and they took the bait. Hinata moved back as three came flying in at her, and she dropped back and flipped backwards close to the ground, her scythe slicing one Yeti in two down the middle, while she swept up to her feet taking the head of another, while her scythe switched its head up and stabbed the last. She stood panting as blood and flesh hit the snow, and the last Yeti fell from her blade. She had never thought of the death and danger she could be in on real ninja missions before, but with Naruto on her side, she felt ready to accept real ninja life. It was the waiting for them to strike again that was trying. Hinata could strike first, but sometimes in life, it was sensible to wait. If Hinata attacked, she could come off worse, and she could not lose when Naruto had shown such faith in her. She ignored any cold, her glasses sparkling through her eyes. They attacked, she moved, swishing around, screaming out as she swung her weapon, slicing and killing the monster gorillas. She moved, left, right, back, forwards, strike, slice, decapitation, and cut. Her movements like a dance of death and chaos, the screams of the Yeti like her music, and she was making a lot of music. Hinata was soon nearing the end of them when one almost got her, but it just fell to the ground dead as a shuriken sliced into its head from a nearby roof, and she took the last head with her side. Looking up, Hinata was relieved to see Naruto looking down at her, with his scarf pulled down around his neck, and hood pulled back. She gave a weak smile as she pulled down her scarf and hood, her bloodline deactivating before she sealed her side away in a weapon scroll. She had spare in her weapons pouch before jumping up to join him. "Naruto-kun," she said breathlessly. "You okay? I'm glad, these things were all over me, and you had the warm thing too." Naruto chuckled as he took some calming breaths. "Sorry if I worried you, Hinata-chan," he replied smiling as he looked weak and breathless. "But I don't think we can just stay here and chat, though I would love to. I think we might have teammates to rescue." Hinata's eyes widened as she thought about it. "I didn't think of Naruto-kun, but they would have come to help us if they were able. After all, you nearly burned down a whole district, and then the giant worm thing," she said looking out to all of the destruction they were the cause of. Naruto looked out too with a sheepish grin. "Yeah, I see what you mean there, Hinata-chan," he said with a shrug. "I hope Yuki-chan isn't pissed that I broke her town." Hinata sighed sadly and nodded her head. "Hey, at least we're still alive," she said while looking at him. Naruto was covered in blood, his and others, and Hinata was certain she looked no better, especially since they were both wearing white. "Yeah, let's hope it stays that way," Naruto answered as he looked out over, towards the tower, his eyes going colder than the snow. "Let's get this bitch and put an end to her before she has a chance to cause us any more trouble." "Sounds like a good idea to me," Hinata answered while breathing in some fresh air, and hoping to gain some of her breath back. "I'm not ever a bad person, but for this witch, I'll make an exception." Naruto smirked while chuckling. "I think I like badass, Hinata-chan." She couldn't help but blush brightly at his semi-compliment, while she hugged hold of him, and robbed herself a delightfully steamy kiss to warm up their lips. Meanwhile, back in Konoha where the weather was far nicer, Hanabi Hyuga had barely managed to slip away from her bodyguards. They just didn't know how to give her some personal space, except for when she was in her room, so she had to sneak past them. She had dressed up in black and covered her face with a scarf and wearing large black sunglasses to hide her noticeable eyes as someone saw her. Hanabi couldn't stop thinking about the man in the green hood. The green arrow. He didn't ask for anything, yet he helped strangers. It contradicted everything Hanabi's father had ever taught her. Arrow didn't even ask for any kind of thanks. It drove crazy, and the other kids at the academy had started noticing that she was distracted, and she had had to reprimand herself for being nice to Mogi-chan. Now, there was a rumor of another nutter running around with a crossbow capturing criminals, a woman this time. Hanabi didn't understand, and to confuse her more, the Hokage didn't seem to care, and her father found some kind of amusement in how much these vigilantes were annoying the council, well, mainly the civilian council, as most of the ninja council didn't seem to care. When Hanabi had left her family compound, she had stolen an old wooden bow with a set of arrows from her family's armory. They didn't have anything modern as they tended to not use weapons other than kunai and shuriken, so it was all old stuff, nothing less than 50 years old, which was surprising, as she figured with their eyes, they would use long-distance weapons. She found it annoying that Arrow was so good at using a bow with normal eyes, showing off his amazing talent. Hanabi had figured that if Arrow could be such an amazing archer, then why couldn't she? Well, that's why she snuck away and headed into the training grounds. She found a nice spot far from anyone and set up a makeshift target, but no matter what she did, she couldn't even hit it, and using her eye bloodline seemed to make matters worse, as she couldn't see her target very well, while looking through everything with the blue and white tints of the world. It was early that evening, and Hanabi was sitting on her butt panting for breath. Hanabi's fingers were cut up and bloody, and all her arrows were in a thick tree, only 2 in her target, but nowhere near the bullseye of her chalk target. Hanabi was startled a short moment later as she heard some drunken rowdiness. She quickly got to her feet and rushed behind a tree, hoping whoever it was didn't think much of the arrows in the tree if they noticed. It was with utmost care that she poked her head around her hiding tree. Her eyes widened in shock as she readjusted her glasses and scarf to hide her face. She watched several Konoha ninjas drag a barely conscious Kunoichi by her short blonde hair. Looking up to her forehead, Hanabi saw a Suna headband. The blonde has her hair up in 4 tails to the back, and her armored robes were a little torn up. Hanabi had never felt more desperate for someone else to intervene in anything before now, as she looked at the beaten up and bloodied girl. She looked only a year or 2 older than her own big sister. She knew what these weakling ninjas were going to do, and it disgusted her. She also knew that this girl could be a part of the exams, which could mean these morons could start an international incident that could start a war. Hanabi didn't want war, but more importantly she didn't want this girl to suffer these ugly men attacking her like this. This was the type of thing Arrow stopped, the sort of thing Arrow hated, because even if they did start a war, would this girl ever get her justice? Looking to her feet, Hanabi frowned as she noticed one of her arrows had gone astray and was in the ground by her feet. She pulled it out without any thought and cocked it in her bow, pulling it as she stepped around her hiding place, aiming at one of the men, before he ripped the girl's top off. The blonde girl looked at her weakly, shock evident. "Let her go," she cried out breathlessly, which stopped them and caused them to turn to her in surprise. "Well, what do we have here?" the so-called ringleader of the group asked rhetorically. "It looks like this little bit is offering herself up to join this sand whore." He trailed to a stop, shocked as she had let the arrow go, and it had sliced into his chest, dead center. He could only show his horror as he fell down, dead. "Why, you filthy little bitch!" Another of the men yelled in rage before a small arrow sliced into his throat before exploding and spaying his friends with his flesh and blood, as the young woman in purple wearing a mask stood in a tree, her crossbows aimed and ready. "Back down, filth," she hissed out, near growling. "For the crime of high treason, I sentence you all to death." "Shit, that fucking arrow guy has a G-girlfriend." One of the men cried out as they blinked and she had disappeared. He didn't have the chance to run away as he dropped to the ground, face first with 3 arrows in his back. With a boom, the 3 remaining men were blasting off their feet, letting go of the Sunanin. The Sunaninette groaned as she pulled herself up to her hands and knees, panting for breath. She looked around and watched in awe as the masked woman in purple was behind her. The 3 men were groaning dizzily as they tried pulling themselves up before the woman in purple shot each one an arrow in each of their heads without mercy. She had sentenced them and carried out her promise. The woman in purple walked past the Sunanin and to the small girl hidden by black and grabbed her left arm. "You should be more careful and less quick to act. You need to be more watchful," she said with a small smirk aimed at Hanabi. She then looked to Sunanin while holding Hanabi's arm tighter and made the girl feel like she was in some serious trouble. "Are you capable of traveling back into town alone?" "Yeah," the Suna Kanoichi nodded her agreement. "I didn't think Konoha was such a cesspool." "You have no idea," she replied, laughing. "Go back to your hotel, and I'll suggest just keeping this to yourself. The council isn't known for giving a shit unless it costs them money. Isn't it the same everywhere?" she replied as she pulled herself to her feet. "They're dead anyway, so well, I'm Tamari." "Who are you anyway?" "I'm the Huntress." Then with that, Huntress blasts away with the small girl in a blaze of leaves, leaving Tamari alone, and still aching from that sneak attack by this filth. She just kicked a body in her hate before jumping through the trees and heading back into town. Tamari had never imagined that Konoha was no better than her village. The way her village treated her younger brother, and well, just people in general, was the same way those men treated her. Stopping at the edge of the city and the ninja district, Tamari looked out over it in thought. She owed Huntress her innocence, so maybe she could perhaps give a few clues to a certain conspiracy. She didn't want anything to do with it anyway, and she paid her debts. Naruto and Hinata were covered in mud and blood, sweat and smoke from the fires Naruto kept using. They were aching, bleeding and bruised as they tiredly jumped from roof to roof, trying to get to the temple, without having to fight any new monster. "Where does she find these monsters?" Naruto asked as they slid across the roof and carried on. "Do you think there's a monster agency where you can buy them or something?" "I don't think so," Naruto-kun, Hinata replied while panting for breath. "Maybe she summons them like a summons." Naruto nodded thoughtfully. "I suppose that makes as much sense as a shop for occult monsters in Yeti." They had never been so exhausted in their lives, but they had to get to the temple, save their team and kill the witch. The mere thought made both want to cry from their pain. However, when they reached the road to the gates, they both had the simultaneous thought of quitting and going home. Their teammates would be okay without them, wouldn't they? Probably not, which was why they evaluated their situation and had to think everything over. Ahead of them was a cobbled square with some lit lanterns surrounding the square, lighting the dark as the closer they had gotten the darker it got, until the world looked like they were in a snow-packed holiday town in the mid-evening. It would have been a nice image if it weren't for all the pain and monster blood splattered all over the town, and the building Naruto burned down, and the zombie bits all over the place. The temple's gates were golden iron, solid and large, at least 10 feet tall, and each one must have been more than twice as wide. Either side of the gates were red and yellow brick walls, stretching around the huge grounds just as tall as the gates. Through the gates they could see beautiful gardens spreading out with a stone cobbled path leading up to the magnificent temple up ahead. Looking at the temple, it was beautiful with white marble walls shimmering in the dark, standing tall and brilliant. It had one main spire in the center of 4, with fluorescent tiles leading up to a point where some kind of stone monster statue sat with huge stone tails wrapped around. It almost looked alive, and Naruto had to force himself not to think about it, potentially attacking them soon. The other 4 spires were in a square shape, stretching the building into a rounded square shape with many colored windows, stained with many stained glass adaptations of scenes that they couldn't make out from their distance. However, it was the growling beast things in the square between them and the temple gates that got them squirming and feeling like they were fighting a losing battle. They looked like alligators, standing on huge beefy feet, upright with razor-sharp teeth in their narrow snouts, and even sharper claws on their feet and hands. These things rippled with muscle, standing no shorter than 8 feet tall. They came in many different colors, from blue to green to white to red to black. But they had a lot in common, like their flaming blue fur like hair down their backs to their waists. It was as if their fur was on fire but not at the same time. They also had huge bronze spikes running the length of their long and dangerously strong-looking tails. Their eyes were blood red and slanted, and some were even wearing some really old-looking samurai armor with rusty and horribly mistreated katana at their hips. However, that wasn't all as they saw her, standing by the gate leaning up against the wall looking up at them in amusement. She looked more human, well human-shaped. She has blue scales over her right eye, over the side of her nose, down her chin, and completely covering her neck that glittered through different shades. But the rest of her face was human, except her ears had slight scale patches, and were elongated up the side of her head. Her eye with the scales was red, pixelated, but not slanted, and her other was a teal color. She was wearing a low-cut purple crop top, showing the scales must cover her large chest, and cutting off high up on her stomach. She was slender, and her right arm was human, while her left hand armored scales down to a sharp clawed hand. She was barefoot and wearing a purple wrap wrapped around her slender hips with long legs, both human, but with armored scales over her lower thighs down to her ankles. Waving around behind was a long blue scaled tail void of spikes like the monster alligators. Her tail led to a pointed tip seemingly moving of its own mind. Her smile showed sharp twin-fanged teeth, her arms folded under her large bust. Her hair was a silky blue, long on top, but didn't trail down her back, and long down the sides, especially to her left side. The left side had twin braids down to her chin with a blue and white feather caught in it, which hung to her shoulders. She only had to move a little to see her top was practically hanging off her, and she wasn't wearing a bra. Her smile only widened as she watched Naruto and Hinata watching her with concern, her tail seemingly swaying a little faster with eagerness. "This isn't fun anymore," Naruto said, his breathing uneven. The alligator only glanced up at the sound of his voice, but then looking at the woman, she just shook her head still smiling, and they just growled or hissed a little, and went back to staring in different directions. "I hadn't thought it was fun to begin with," Hinata replied as she adjusted her white coat on her shoulders. "I don't suppose they'll just let us pass, do you?" However, Naruto didn't have to answer as the woman by the gate shook her head in agreement, which shocked them as she could hear from that far as they weren't being very loud. "I guess that answers that, Hinata-chan," Naruto finally answered. "Maybe we should go and introduce ourselves." "I was afraid of that," she replied. Naruto couldn't help but feel like crap with the way Hinata had gained confidence through necessity. She was so brave, standing up to her cousin earlier, losing her innocence with her death. He reached out and took Hinata's hand, and she squeezed him in return, smiling. They both nodded to each other and jumped down hand in hand into the square. They both knew that they were unlikely to get out of this alive, but if that was the case, they could only go down fighting. However, the alligator just ignored them as they walked forward, careful not to agitate the monsters in case they disobeyed their master and attacked, or she might be waiting for them to be in the middle, surrounded before they attacked. Naruto didn't want to use his Kaiu-chan's power to blow everything sky high, and he honestly felt too tired. However, they were left alone, and they reached the woman. They started as her long thin blue tongue flicked out a good 20 inches and hissed as it vibrated and licked her blue lips before disappearing back into her mouth. "Naruto-kun, I heard so many good things," she whispered out, her voice soft but dangerous. "Then we have the adorable Hinata-chan. So brave of you, I had so hoped I would get to capture you myself. I am Saskia." She spoke her name as she pushed up from the wall, smiling as she bowed politely in greeting. This close Naruto could see how dark her human skin was. A brown, a little more than a tan, but not much, and it looked natural rather than too much sun. Neither of them had heard such an accent before, but it rolled off her tongue, sharp and strong. "It isn't like we have much fight left," Naruto said with a small laugh. "But we probably won't come quietly. I wouldn't want you to," but she shrugged as they spun to a flash of blue. It was like the alligator was breathing out icy flames, and Hinata and Naruto were flash frozen. They tumbled to the ground in a slump, frozen, but not solid. They had both passed out because of the cold overwhelming them. Saskia grinned as she crouched down and ran her human fingers over both young ninjas. Feeling them both, she laughed. "It's a shame," she muttered, gently squeezing Naruto's crotch. "I wouldn't mind a big boy like you at my side, but orders are orders," she muttered before paying Hinata's chest a little attention. "I could have even kept this one to service our needs like a pet, but who knows what the master will want. I hope it's nothing deadly, as I would hate to go up against little Suki-chan. Naruto groaned as he woke up, shivering and feeling dizzy. His vision was blurry, and he tried to blink away the multiple colors dancing in his field of vision. The world looked like it was on its head when he realized his hands were cuffed behind his back, his ankles were tied together, and he was hanging upside down about 10 meters off the ground from the wooden rafters above him, from some powerful-looking chains. Looking around, Naruto was surprised that he was in a huge hall with wooden benches, either side of a red-carpeted central passage with aisles either side. He internally congratulated himself on making it to the temple. He could now make out the stained glass windows depicting battle scenes throughout time, he guessed. However, that was not as important as his sensei and Tsume hanging from the ceiling in a large cage in their underwear, looking totally pissed off. Naruto groaned as he looked himself over and realized all he was wearing were his black boxer shorts firmly to his body, and it took him a moment to realize he was wearing a metal muzzle with iron straps and only tiny vents to breathe, not that they did much. Looking around, he was surprised to see a huge black dog, Kuromare, looking pissed off while chained to a wall with giant metal chains and choker collar, so he sat watching Naruto with an exasperated, "You're supposed to be rescuing us, not hanging from the ceiling" look. Next to the dog, Shino was in a huge glass bowl with some very tiny mesh air holes to keep his bugs in and allow him air. He sat cross-legged and calculating, but at least he got to keep his clothes. Looking around more, Naruto sighed in relief as he saw Hinata groggily looking around from where her wrists and ankles were chained to a wall, hanging her several feet from the ground, and though her white coat and boots were now on the floor below her, she was still relatively clothed. But her ceiling scroll containing her stolen scythe was on the floor with her coat and boots. "Oh, fuck." Naruto mumbled to himself in annoyance, which got their attention. "Why the hell have my clothes been stolen?" he asked as he looked around the empty hall, and past a makeshift throne where he saw a huge metal pedestal, with a beautifully forged light green bow staff floating above it in a green light. "We were carrying so many weapons it was easier than continuing to search us," Kurenai said with a sigh. "Though, I think that Uchiha girl just wanted to strip you." "With that werewolf girl's help," Tsume butted in helpfully. "Okay," Naruto replied nervously. "Uchiha girl werewolf. Yeah, you apparently have them obsessed," Kurenai agreed with a shrug. "The Uchiha seems to be madly in love with you." Naruto nodded while his eyes showed he was baffled. "Okay, that seems to be Sasuke's karma coming to strip me, but why the hell am I upside down wearing a muzzle?" "They considered you the most dangerous," Kurenai said, sounding hurt. Her student was treated with more fear than either her or Tsume. "They said you burned down half a district, and they don't want you burning down the temple." "Good to know," Naruto said, looking over at them. Tsume was wearing white undies while Kurenai was actually wearing black, and both were thonged up their butts, and their broads were quite skimpy and lacy. They actually blushed as his eyes scanned them, and he was glad for the muzzle as it hid his grin. "Where's the witch?" Hinata interrupted from her binds with a little struggling, but it was no good, and she didn't want Naruto to get himself into trouble for saying something about their sensei and Tsume's undressed states. "Which one, this master of theirs or that lizard girl one that finally captured you both?" Tsume asked while they looked at her. "Well, we've only met that lizard girl, their master hasn't turned up yet. Too busy making that snowstorm," Naruto said in annoyance. "So, you said Uchiha girl and werewolf?" he asked as he looked around for them as he was curious to see an actual werewolf. Therefore, Kurenai and Tsume began their tales of being beaten up before Naruto and Hinata told their story, which the two women thought was unfair, as they destroyed more than just some zombies. "Well, that's messed up," Naruto said laughingly. "I bet Uchiha girls are cooler than Sasuke, and hundreds of times better ninja dot." "Of course, I am," the dark-haired girl interrupted as she entered the temple's large front doors, with what she thought was a sexy swagger in her step, and a cheeky grin on her red-painted lips. "Well, if it isn't my Naruto-kun wide awake," she suggested, smugly licking her lips. "I could climb up there and lick you all over." Naruto's eyebrows rose as she stopped below him, looking up with little hearts, figuratively, in her dark eyes. "Suki?" Naruto questioned in shock as pieces of long-forgotten memory formed in his mind. "I thought you were dead with the rest of your clan." "Nah, Naruto-kun," she said cheerfully. "But I am so happy you remember me, but it is me, Naruto-kun, darling." "So, don't be silly," she replied, licking her lips more and nibbling her lower lip sweetly. "You should call me Suki-chan like you used to back when we played together. Though, I have to admit, I hadn't thought that I would see you again. This is awesome. You're still as cute as ever, and wow, you have an amazing body, and destructive power that puts me in awe, not to mention smoking hot," and we took a peek. "I've been so fussy about finding a boy to be my first, my love, especially knowing that the perfect boy was out there for me, you, and here you come to me. It must be fate, so why don't you join us and go Nukenin and be mine, ha, Naruto-kun. You can have all of us girls if you want. I wouldn't be stingy, plus, Gabby really needs some love, and there would be fights if I didn't share my boyfriend well, you with the others." "Tempting offer," he answered with a chuckle while his team watched worriedly, and Hinata was appraising Suki with a cool look. "But why don't you quit being a super villainous and come and be mine? I'm sure Hinata-chan wouldn't mind as long as she gets to have fun too." Suki openly laughed and her grin widened impossibly. "I really want you. I love you so much, Naruto-kun," she said while biting her lower lip, her eyes just checking out his near-nakedness, dark with wanton need. "Wow, this is irony coming to bite me on my arse," Naruto said in amazement. "Well, if that's what you're into," Suki replied, licking her lips hungrily. Naruto chuckled nervously. "It's just, your doubt of a brother has or had all of these fangirls, but I'm sorry to say I think he must swing the other way as he didn't want to know." He may be crushing on Itachi Nai-san because he always cries out about his brother this, his brother that, and wants to go looking for him. I would have thought a clan like that would want diversity or their bloodline will burn out, but I guess no one told Sasuke incest is off the table, and that should be doubly for gay incest. Suki couldn't help but giggle some more as she looked up. So, you were closer than I knew. Yeah, Naruto answered. He was always looking out for me. He saved my life several times from bastards in the city. He even killed some of his own clan while protecting me. I was born on October 10th, the night of the Kyuubi attack, so they take out their hate on me. Well, those with money do anyway. They call the Kyuubi a monster and murder, while praising Minato Namikaze as a hero, after he had murdered hundreds of Iwanin single-handedly. One man's hero is another man's villain, she replied thoughtfully. But isn't that reason for you to join us? Sorry, beautiful, Naruto replied, actually looking at it too. For the record, I still love you. It was always an amazing time for me when your mum brought you to the park and we could play together. But if you let me down, I could still take you out on a date if you don't mind zombie infestations, and the lack of open restaurants, and we could stop by the park. I can push you on the swings. That would be nice, but I'm not stupid, Suki said while rolling her eyes. I have you tied up and you're naked. I could just have you here now, just the thought of running my hands over that powerful body of yours makes me whimper. I'll just tint up a big boy's cage, but the others I hear boys find it a turn on to have other girls watching. Have you been reading Ichircha? He asked her, which made her blush and look sheepish. Naruto rolled his eyes. Sure, those books can be amusing, but really though, thinking about it well that probably is a big turn on. Naruto. Kurenai reprimanded, gaining their attention. Shut up sensei-san, we weren't talking to you, Suki said in annoyance before turning back to Naruto with her smile. So I know, how about I come up there with you and suck you off? The books have a lot of that. I've never done it before, but I'm sure it can't be difficult making you cum in my mouth. I'll even drink it all too. You have no tact, girl, interrupted a young woman with wild and amused short platinum blonde hair and fanged teeth, her blue eyes dancing with amusement as she swaggered in behind Suki. Says the girl who's still walking around naked. Suki retorted while Shino's nose exploded in blood, and he went flying back in his bowl and cracked his head, but they just ignored him as he knocked himself out. Naruto couldn't keep his eyes off the wild girl's firm naked body, from her small breasts to her sharp nails and smooth skin. Wow, you must be the, Naruto said, eyeing her, which she seemed to like. Please excuse me as I'm a teenage boy with teenage hormones and you're hot and naked, and then I have Suki-chan wanting to molest me. I like being your prisoner. They both grinned at the compliment as they saw Naruto's boxers twitch with his monster. Of course, Naruto-kun, the werewolf girl, said licking her pouty lips. But fun will have to wait until the mistress is through with you. Does it have anything to do with Dot? The staff, Uzumaki-sama, had an amused and cool voice. She walked in with Sasuke bringing up the rear to her right, looking like a totally obedient servant, and Naruto didn't need to ask to know the lizard girl had a fetish for obedience, as she was almost frothing in the mouth and squirming. This one, he knew, was the witch in charge. She was milk-white and wearing long white silk robes, loosely over her small and slender body, but he could see she was barefoot, and he had to wonder whether she was naked under the robe. Her toe and fingernails were painted black like her lips and eyelids. Her eyes were pitch black and cold, but still, the way she smiled was somewhat adorable in a sinister way. Her hair was feather white and long and loose down to her ankles. It was lush and thick-tailing at the end, and hanging over her shoulders and tails, and between her eyes. She held an elongated transparent crystal gem melting down into a silver pole, with white leather wrapped around it with a handguard going down a foot over the leather. She was using it as a walking stick, but Naruto could sense its power. She also wore a similar gem, only red on a piece of black string around her neck. Damn, are you two both going to molest me too? Naruto couldn't help but ask. Don't think too highly of yourself, boy, the witch said in annoyance as she and the lizard girl stopped next to Suki and Gabby. He was a little annoyed at the boy's comment. She couldn't be more than a year or two older than him. I might though. They were interrupted further as another girl followed them in, also a few years older. Akane-chan, Hinata asked timidly as the Hyuga girl came to a stop. She looked bruised up and had dried blood around her mouth and down her slim neck. She had changed into a new robe of black silk, and her eyes weren't completely focused as she flexed, and a cool blast of dark chakra flexed from under her skin. Master, your charm to hide my issue has failed, Haku said with a tired pout as she almost fell to the floor, but the werewolf Gabby moved and slid her arms around, and pulled her tight into her arms, helping her stand, and she gave the wolf girl a look of gratitude. The witch sighed. Nobody cares that you're corrupted by yokai, she said while rolling her eyes. You were the idiot who tried to resurrect the dead in some pretty dark ways. I told you that messing with the dead can bring terrible consequences. You should think yourself lucky, your cousin almost killed you as it is. Haku turned to Hinata and pouted. I'm over it, Hinata-chan, you beat me fair and square. I don't see why you would, but I know you cried for me. That was nice of you. Hinata whimpered as she sighed in relief. I'm so happy to see you well, she looked at her other captors. Well, I mean I would be if you know your friends hadn't kidnapped me and my teammates. Oh, yeah, Haku said sheepishly while glaring at Gabby as she was giggling and ended up resting her face in the werewolf's breasts, as they were soft and comfortable, and she was so tired. Don't worry about that, we only want the silly magical stick, she said, pointing to the floating staff. Indeed, the witch agreed with a small smirk. We have no interest in killing anyone, and before you accuse us, the death of the townsfolk was an accident. The staff had a curse that backfired on the villagers, and almost killed us. However, that is where you come in, Uzumaki-sama. Once you've had a nice rest, certain young ladies let you, she said, glaring around at all of her girls while they feigned innocence. But, as you can imagine, Uzumaki-sama, my girls find themselves drawn to a wonderfully powerful young man like yourself, Uzumaki-sama. Okay, Naruto said slowly while glancing around as all eyes were once again on him. But what's the deal with the same thing? Your clan was once renowned for their talents, she answered, shrugging. They were once a great power, but now they're down to just one, though. There's perhaps a few others knocking around somewhere, who knows? She asked with a half shrug before she continued. Anyway, they were once known for their dense chakra, natural sealing talents, and of course the chains. The chakra chains, the chains of fate, whatever you want to call them, a power that can subdue and seal monsters, even the great beasts. The 10 Bijuru, rumored to have descended from the Sage of Six Paths. But that last part is only speculation because of the odd person born to your clan with the fabled. Then there's the whole chain-sealing demon thing. Wow, you know about Yubi. Naruto was surprised. Normally everyone thinks Kyuubi is the last and strongest. The witch snorted and rolled her eyes as she walked under him to her throne, while his chains turned him to face her by itself, or magic as she sat. People can be so ignorant of the truths, don't you think, Bear? She asked whimsically. Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, prison to the demon fox, she said, causing Suki and Gabby to gasp, and the two looked at him with a newfound respect, while the others didn't look surprised. Wow, Naruto-kun, Suki said in delight. Your sexiness level just went through whatever comes after the roof, she said while Gabby was nodding in agreement. Naruto laughed as he closed his eyes. What can I say, but I'm awesome, he said as his eyes flashed open, blood red pixelated with slanted pupils. Demonic killing intent washed over the room, but it wasn't too bad as he growled. In fact, Gabby was getting off on it before the metal muzzle started glowing red and melted off, followed by a huge blast of fire. Suki and Gabby quickly dived out of the way, with Gabby crashing down on top of them before the flames stopped, and they saw Naruto's mouth and lower face burnt up and healing before their eyes, with a sparkling stream of red light. Naruto then spat a tight white hot beam of fire that shattered through the chains, before spinning back and landing on his feet, his cuffs shattering with brute strength alone. In only a few seconds, he had gotten completely free with just the shackle cuffs and some chain links around his wrists and ankles. Naruto was smiling as the last of his burns healed away, and his eyes were crystal blue again. I like being tied up by cute girls, but we have a mission to complete, and I'm really hungry, he said as he crouched over Suki and stole her first kiss, which caused her to go all giddy before he stood up straight with a smirk. Leave him, the witch demanded as Saskia went to subdue him. He is very low on power, resorting to taking the Kyuubi's power. I doubt he could do much more. I got a kiss, Suki squeaked out while blushing up a storm in delighted embarrassment. The kiss isn't exactly very threatening, Suki-chan, the witch said while her eyes rolled more. Now, get up you three and stop being weirder than normal. Saskia leaned down and pulled up and helped her stand while Gabby pouted as she hopped up and watched Naruto's lips, and Suki stood with her while looking embarrassed and smug. Wow, Naruto said sheepishly. You're so cute, evil, and smart, he said while smiling at the witch, and giving her suggestive enough wink to get a slight pink to her milky cheeks. You're right, of course. I am almost completely defenseless now. I used the last of my strength. I haven't started training in demonic chakra. Why don't you just tell us what you want? The smart-mouthed guardian had escaped, the witch replied. I sent out men to bring her back. However, someone had murdered them and set her free. Probably their fault. Father Nin are so quick to get themselves killed by doing something stupid. The witch has the key inside her to free the Eon staff, she said, gesturing to it. But now, I only have some ninja, except one of them has the power of the nine-tailed beast, a dangerous force of nature. Kyuubi. Her power should be enough to overload the seals without the key. If you do this for me, all but the Hyuga and yourself will be freed. You have killed a very useful servant, and tried to murder Haku-chan. You shall make wonderful replacements for Gaius. I shall then stay clear of Konoha, and it will not befall any harm, yada yada, the usual offer. I'll need some rest and time to think, Naruto said with a neutral expression. Just don't hurt them, he added while gesturing to his teammates. Of course, you need rest, she agreed, smirking. Suki, Gabby, go with Saskia and take him to a room where he can sleep comfortably and tuck in while you're there, she said before turning back to Naruto. Your friends will be perfectly safe and untouched, and girls, don't keep him up too long. No, Naruto-kun, Hinata called out worriedly when her bind dropped her to the floor, blinking in confusion. Take her with you, she added in annoyance. I do not want either of my new servants exhausted. Who are you anyway? Naruto asked as Suki started dragging him away eagerly, while Sasuke was pulling Hinata after them, while half-carrying Gabby had just taken Naruto's white coat and tied it on as she breathed in his scent, looking blissful as she followed. "I am Katniss," she answered, smirking as they were about to exit through a back door when she swished away in white mist, as several shurikens sliced through where she had been sitting and stuck into her throne. She reappeared glaring as more shuriken flew through the room at her girls, and they all had to dodge away from the door, Naruto and Hinata included. Naruto and Hinata landed together away from their captors, and looked up to see a muscle-bound man in blue with black amber robes. His face held a scowl, and his brown eyes glared at Katniss, from where he landed crouched on one of the back benches. He had short brown hair with a strong square jaw, and stood about 6'5". Next to him stood a lean and athletic-looking man, about 19 with his black hair long to his shoulders, wearing a black suit with white shirt, and looked a head shorter than the 6'5" man. He was wearing stylish sunglasses over his dark eyes and several shuriken in each hand. However, both had Konoha forehead protectors. The large man's headband was around his forehead, and the other man was hanging like a large keychain from his left hip. "You couldn't have turned up in the morning?" Naruto couldn't help but ask. Though neither of them replied, they just went straight into action, the large one drawing kunai and attacking the witch, while the athletic one shot across to the other four girls. Naruto just sighed and shook his head as he and Hinata looked at their captured teammates. "Wow, that guy in the suit now," Naruto said, chuckling nervously as he just got pounded flying. However, moments later the ground shook as something blew up before someone smashed through a stained glass window. Spinning through, she landed in the central passage with a flare. She couldn't be any older than 16, small, short, and slender, and the Konoha forehead protector around her neck was promising. She was wearing some beige trousers and a tight blue top with a cream leather jacket. Her eyes were startling green, and her hair was bright red down to her shoulders, tied back and out of her eyes with some hair clips. She had multiple pockets and scrolls hanging around her excruciatingly tiny waist. The building shook again with another explosion, and the roof started sagging, which made Tsume and Kurenai scream for help, and even Shino had woken with Tsume's dog growling and demanding someone free him. "Sorry," the new girl said. "I accidentally set off the paper bombs early." Naruto sighed as he walked to a front row of benches and pulled on his trousers and boots quickly, while Hinata pulled on her boots and stashed away her scroll, and the others fought around them. "Hinata-chan, do you think you can free Shino and Kurumeru?" Naruto asked, and she nodded. "I'll get Sensei and Tsume down while they continue fighting," he said as he watched the Reddit join the athletic guy. "Okay, Naruto-kun, be careful," she said as she robbed a quick kiss, wondering whether that included a second-hand kiss of Suki, before she shook her head clear as she dodged through the chaos towards Shino and Tsume's dog partner. Naruto looked up at the cage as it shook with another explosion. He was just thankful that the temple had been built well. He rolled his muscles as he concentrated on pulling at his chakra. Crouching low, he shot up and over. He wasn't going to make it as he tried to grab the bottom of the cage, but he got a surprise as Kurenai had reached through the bars and grabbed his hand, and stopped him from falling back down as they swung with his momentum. "You're heavier than you look," she grunted as Tsume reached through, and helped her pull him up until he was holding onto the bars, panting for breath as he could stand from the outside. "The cage is made out of chakra-conductive alloy, and neither of us have any kind of technique strong enough to overcome it. This stuff is well made too, so I don't know whether we would have that kind of power anyway," Tsume said as they both stood up by him and looked great in their undies. "Do you think you can get it open from out there?" Naruto examined the cage, his eyes scanning over the lock. He frowned as he checked his pockets. "Damn, I don't know what happened to my lockpick kit," he said in annoyance. "Who carries a lockpick kit?" Kurenai asked. "Well, I do," Naruto said while shrugging. "You never know when a teammate or two might be locked in an unbreakable cage." "Okay, no need to remind me," Kurenai said sadly. "I got this, I just need," Naruto mumbled as he looked around and down. "Hey Red," he called out, and the red-haired girl looked up in surprise as she dodged Suki's icy blue flames. "I need a hair clip if you don't mind." She didn't even hesitate as she slid one from her hair and flicked it up before getting back into her fight while Gabby had transformed and she was tag-teaming the athletic man with Sasuke. "Naruto-kun." He heard Suki whine a little. Naruto watched for a moment as he caught the clip and smirked at his sensei and Tsume. It took him a surprisingly short time to pick the lock and free the two women from their cozy cage. Meanwhile, looking down and around, Hinata had shattered Shino's prison and freed Kurumeru, and the three were trying to get into trouble, though like Naruto the dogs still had the cuff and some chain links. The ground shook as they looked from them to the witch and huge guy, as he was hit by some destructive magic and crashed through a support pillar, destabilizing the building further. Naruto and the women jumped down, both women meeting up with Kurumeru and charging at the witch, while she just looked amused. However, Naruto helped the large man up as the ground shook more, and mortar and concrete started crumbling from the walls with bricks with glass shattering. It was a shame. The temple was likely very old. Naruto ground his teeth as he looked around at the destruction taking place, and grimaced as Kurenai and Tsume were being handed their panty-clad arses. Keep them busy, and I'll try to get the staff. Naruto said as he tried to catch his breath. The large man gave him a strange look. I'm in no condition to fight anymore, and we need to get out of here, and nobody wants her to have that thing. What if his protections break when this place is rubble? He said, which got a calculating nod this time as he rushed off to help the woman from Katniss's power. Naruto rushed and dodged through the chaos, and made it to the Aeon staff in moments. He reached up, but the light burned his hand fizzling before he got thrown backward, crashing into a row of benches. Crashing through the first row, he ended embedded in the second. He groaned as he felt his conscience drifting. He could just make out an army of zombies charging into the temple followed by alligator demons, and his head was spinning. He started hallucinating a beautiful green-haired girl wearing a white outfit, and she looked amused. She seemed to tie some kind of silver chain around his right wrist, winking. Destroying the pendant around her neck, she whispered around into his ear. It will help, she finished as she faded away, leaving Naruto groggy as he shook away his pain and pulled himself up. He looked to his right wrist to see a silver phoenix on the end of the chain, and quickly climbed back over to the staff. This time he reached in with his right hand, and nothing happened until he wrapped his hand around the staff. In that second the green light rippled out, knocking over only Katniss and her minions. The witch looked up in horror and anger, as Naruto turned with the staff in hand, and he blazed with mystical energy. Well, the staff blazed with the remnants of the energy it used to protect itself. Let's get out of here, now. Naruto shouted to his fellow ninja as more and more of the building crumbled and the roof sank more, ramming zombies out of the way and avoiding icy breath. They didn't need telling twice as they abandoned the fight and rushed for the exit. However, Naruto jumped up over benches, battering a few zombies out of his way. He was within Katniss's domain and wrapped her soft small body in his arms, before pulling back and carrying on, running away. Katniss screamed in shock, rage, and sadness, as they felt the demonic energy of Kyuubi as Naruto's left fist swirled with crimson light, as he crushed her pendant to dust. However, her screams became despair as a shockwave blew out and around, encompassing the whole of the town from the pendant. The zombies crumpled to the ground and fireflies of greens and yellows started floating out of the unmoving bodies. Then the alligator monsters dissolved into icy flames, disappearing back to whatever dimension they came from. Naruto didn't stop running as he destroyed her pendant and leapt through the open doors just before the archway crumbled. He skidded to a halt, smirking at a job well done, while his team +3 stood around him watching the temple fall. Hey, kitty cat, girls, Naruto yelled back. You might want to teleport away or something before you're crushed by the building. Naruto could see Katniss pouting angrily as she glared at him before she found her girls, and a yellow circle of light surrounded them, and they swished away with Suki, giving them a small sad wave before they were gone. I've got to admit, that was awesome, Naruto said as he watched with the others, as the temple finally crumbled to a complete rest, resting his new staff on his right shoulder. He could now appreciate the staff's power, even if he couldn't use it. But they got away and well, I know they're okay, so that will have to do. I want to get Suki-chan back and a werewolf and a couple of powerful witches. Don't forget, Hakuni-chan, Hinata added helpfully. Of course not, Hinata-chan, he agreed with a grin. That they got away, I'm not sure whether to be pissed at that or not. I would think being pissed is the right thing, Kurenai said with a sigh, as getting their hands on those girls and getting them to work for Konoha, since the zombie thing didn't seem to be Katniss's fault, seemed like a good idea. Though you were in a better position than us, Kurenai said, shivering in the cold snow. Here the snow should melt once the weather returns to normal, the large man said as he pulled out a sealing scroll and unsealed 2 large warm cloaks, which Sum and Kurenai took without hesitation. Who are you 3 anyway? Sum asked. We're one of the demon investigation teams, the girl said with a grin. My name Virgo, these are my teammates Taurus, she gestured to the large guy. And Leo, we were sent out a few days ago, and when we got here noticed the battle, so she shrugged and looked around at all the corpses with fireflies. What happened to all of the zombies? I destroyed a pendant that Katniss was wearing, Naruto said, gaining their attention. He shrugged. It was controlling most of the monsters. I think she just used magic to lead the zombies. Then when I broke her magical gem, I think it broke her spells and that magical backwash, and that likely dispelled the zombification too. Good. We should leave, Leo said, looking bored. Just in case your nut job friends return, and we were in no condition to fight them again. Agreed, Kurenai said as she led the way. So, you 3 of the famous Zodiac Anbu. Yep, that's us, Virgo agreed, shrugging. We can't lead you back to the village, but it would be cool of you to head back right away and brief the Hokage on the situation. It's now a double S-class secret. It doesn't seem like the other demons were those witches doing as all the other monsters were under their control and not wild, but for now keep it on the down low, okay? Will do, Kurenai agreed with a tired sigh, rubbing a bruise over her right eye. We already knew about the demons, but we never thought someone was stirring them up, and it didn't seem like that Katniss girl wanted anyone interrupting them. Hey, sensei, I have to go and get something, Naruto interrupted as his staff shrank down for better management and stuck chakra to his back. I'll meet you all at the gates in 10 minutes. Where are you going? Kurenai asked in concern. Naruto smiled. I have a promise to keep, he said as he ran off leaping from roof to roof. He wasn't surprised that Hinata had charged after him, but he was that Virgo did too. We should travel in units until out of the danger zone, Virgo said with a sheepish smile. So, what are we looking for? She asked as they finally stopped on a balcony and entered a manor house bedroom. Virgo didn't ask more as Naruto pulled the covers back on a dead girl's face to see her. He sighed sadly as he covered her face again, and gently scooped her body into his arms. He held her lovingly as he already missed his new friend, ghost or not. She was nice. Great, you're back. They were all startled as the bedroom door flew open and a ghost girl floated through struggling with a huge backpack full of stuff and smiling. She dropped it next to another. I packed all of the stuff I'll need, and I figured out how to touch things, but it's pretty hard and took ages to pack when I kept dropping things when they phased through me. Are you going somewhere, Yuki-chan? Naruto asked in confusion while Virgo just stared open-mouthed at the ghost girl. Yeah, I'm going with you and Hinata-chan, you don't mind, do you? She asked hopefully. Naruto shrugged. Well, I guess he didn't pass on, but then we only managed to free the Walking Dead, he said as he placed down her body and pulled on one backpack, while Hinata grabbed the other before he picked up her body again. Well, come on then, Yukina cheered as she floated out of the balcony into the bright sun with a happy grin. Naruto laughed as he jumped out with her. But she's a ghost, Virgo said, baffled. Yes, but she's also our friend, Hinata said, happy for her friend. Come on Virgo, or they'll leave us behind, she added as she followed out of the window. Virgo shrugged and just followed her as she had seen a lot of weird things the past few hours. Making friends with a ghost wasn't so strange anymore. Naruto and Hinata walked with Yukina as they left town and walked down the mountain pass with their team and the 3 Zodiac Anbu. However, they didn't seem to notice the weird stares they were getting as one of them was a ghost, and even though they had seen plenty of strange things that day, the ghost shouldn't be that strange, but it still was. Kurenai sighed, shaking her head. And I thought Uchiha being a Naruto fangirl was odd, she said rubbing her head, but at least they had left the snow, so her bare feet were more comfortable in the sun, and she didn't have to keep regulating her temperature, so she could relax. Well, he's a cute boy, Tsume said with a shrug. So, an Uchiha girl likes him. You've seen Sasuke Uchiha, I've never understood anyone's fascination with him. But Naruto, I had suspected he was Kushina's son. The name is a dead giveaway, but that could be an accident, but every time I brought it up with Sarutobi, he just changed the subject and all. If he's Kushina's son then that means he's dot. I wouldn't finish that sentence if I were you, Taurus interrupted with his eyes cold, while even Virgo looked at him surprised and confused, while wondering who Kushina Uzumaki was, as she realized, she was too young to know what they were talking about. And I wouldn't tell him or speak to anyone about it either. But she was dating Kurenai, but paled and trailed off as he leveled a cold glare at her. Neither of you, he finished. And that goes for any knowledge you have of his mother's family too. It would be prudent for you to inform your students to that effect. Naruto smirked a little as he listened to the large man with his enhanced hearing. He just wanted to know what reasons the old man Hokage had for this bull. He just hoped the old man lasted long enough to explain himself someday.
That's it for today guys. I hope you enjoyed my video and see you in the next part of this video. Till then, sayonara.